How can a company market a drug knowing doctors will use it to infringe a patent and yet not be held liable? That was the central paradox in Hikma versus Amarin. A legal puzzle with billion-dollar stakes for the entire pharmaceutical industry. The case climbed all the way to the Supreme Court. On June 4, 2026, the justices delivered a decisive unanimous answer, 9-0. In her opinion, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson drew a bright line. Mere knowledge that infringement might happen is not enough. To be liable, a generic manufacturer must purposefully cause the infringing act. Hikma's skinny label for its Vascepa generic had omitted the patented use. Its press releases were deemed standard industry practice. Amarin saw a conspiracy of language. The court saw compliance. The key to this paradox wasn't found in the courtroom. It was on a pharmacy shelf, with a single drug approved for two very different jobs. That single drug was icosapent ethyl, a highly purified fish oil derivative. Amarin Pharma branded it Vascepa. Its first life was narrow, FDA approval for severe hypertriglyceridemia, a condition of dangerously high triglycerides. A niche, if necessary, purpose. That indication built the market, but the patent clock was ticking. The real treasure was a second, far broader application for the same molecule. Amarin bet big on further research, culminating in a landmark clinical trial. The result? Vascepa could also slash the risk of major adverse cardiovascular events in certain patients. That discovery was a strategic masterstroke. Medical, yes, but especially commercial. For that CV use, Amarin held a new layer of intellectual property, 2 method of use patents. Not on the molecule itself, that would soon be open to generics, but on the asterisk method of using it to protect the heart. This was the dual indication play. It erected a patent thicket around the drug's most valuable use. By 2025, Vascepa was generating massive revenue for Amarin, including $213.6 million in that year alone. A fortune fueled largely by the patented cardiovascular application. The patents themselves stood formidable, untouched. But the foundation was cracking. The underlying molecule was now exposed. A legal pathway existed for competitors. Enter the market by targeting only the original, off-patent use. A skinny label. A direct assault on the walls of Amarin's fortress. Hikma Pharmaceuticals saw the crack in the wall. Its weapon of choice. A regulatory pathway Congress built for generic drugs. The abbreviated New Drug Application, or ANDA. A legal fast track for generics, demanding only proof of bioequivalence, not $1 billion in redundant trials. Hikma's move was surgical. It would not storm Amarin's cardiovascular patents. It would bypass them entirely. Its target was the original unpatented territory. It first secured FDA approval for a skinny label generic, targeting the approved severe hypertriglyceridemia (SH) indication for which the initial patents had fallen. The maneuver had a name, the skinny label. Hikma's FDA filing was a precise document. It carved out every word relating to the heart protective claims. It was a masterclass in regulatory compliance. A feint, perfectly executed under the rules of the game. The FDA approved it. The molecule was free, but with a caveat. Officially. Only for the old fight, not the new one. But Amarin saw more than a label. It saw a strategy. It alleged the trust placed in the system was being weaponized. The accusation? That Hikma's real instructions weren't on the bottle, they were between the lines. In press releases. On websites. Amarin argued, these communications whispered what the label could not shout. Use this for everything. Substitute it freely. A message, they claimed, aimed directly at doctors to prescribe the drug for everything. The question was no longer about a molecule. It was about intent. Could a company, following the FDA's rulebook, be held liable for such active encouragement? The fuse was lit. The fight was now over what Hikma and I did form say. Amarin pointed the finger not at the bottle, but at the marketing. At the patient leaflets, the website copy, the press materials. Each one referred to Hikma's drug as the generic version of Vascepa. a phrase loaded with unspoken meaning. The legal charge was explicit: active inducement under 35 U.S.C. Section 271b. Amarin's theory was that these phrases were more than descriptors. They were a signal, a deliberate nudge to doctors and pharmacies to substitute freely for every use Vascepa had, including the newly patented cardiovascular fight. Under this view, the skinny label was just a mask. The real encouragement was hiding in plain sight. A federal district court saw it differently. It dismissed the case, affirming the skinny label's traditional shield. But that victory was short-lived. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit reversed it. In a move that sent shockwaves through the industry, the appellate judges found Amarin's argument plausible. They concluded Hikma's words could constitute the active encouragement the law forbids. The shield had cracked. The stable ground of the skinny label strategy began to shift. With the Federal Circuit's ruling, a single question now threatened to upend an entire system. Could standard industry language become a legal weapon? The conflict demanded a final answer. It headed to the one court that could provide one. On June 4, 2026, 9 justices spoke with one voice. In a unanimous decision authored by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court reversed the Federal Circuit and dismantled Amarin's case brick by brick. The ruling: Amarin had failed to plausibly state a claim for active inducement of infringement under 35 U.S.C. Section 271b. After years of litigation that had destabilized an entire corner of pharmaceutical law, the answer turned out to be simple. The court's reasoning cut to bone. It broke the inducement claim into its 3 required elements: direct infringement by a third party, the defendant's knowledge of that infringement, and critically, a specific intent to cause it. 2 out of 3 was not enough. Amarin needed all 3. It couldn't land the third. The court sharpened the standard for that decisive final element. A plaintiff must show more than ambiguous communications that could be misread by a doctor or pharmacist. They must plead plausible facts demonstrating the defendant took clear and affirmative active steps to encourage the specific infringing use. Mere knowledge that off-label substitution might occur? Not even close. Applying that framework, the court found Hikma's conduct fell well short. Its press releases and website copy, which identified its product as a generic version of Vascepa, carried what the court called an obvious non-infringing explanation, namely, compliance with FDA regulations, standard industry practice. The very language Amarin had weaponized was, in the court's eyes, the language of lawful business. The razor-thin distinction between providing lawful information and promoting unlawful use now stood as the law of the land. But the ruling did more than settle one dispute between 2 companies. It drew a line in the sand for every brand and every generic watching this case. And what happened next would test just how far that line extended. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision didn't just reverse a lower court ruling. It detonated a legal grenade in the pharmaceutical patent wars. By reversing the Federal Circuit, the court fortified the skinny label pathway into a veritable fortress. The ruling recalibrates the pleading standard for brand name patentees. No longer can a lawsuit proceed on the mere vapor of ambiguous marketing language or the hypothetical inferences of a doctor. Plaintiffs must now present plausible facts showing clear, affirmative steps, encouraging a specific infringing use. A much higher bar to clear at the motion to dismiss stage. This procedural safeguard now shields generic firms from the costly speculative litigation that had become a strategic weapon. This judicial clarity redraws the strategic map. For generic companies, communications that adhere to standard industry practice, like identifying a product as a generic equivalent, now operate within a much safer harbor. The decision narrows the scope of inducement liability to a pinpoint. The legal battleground is no longer about what a Dr. Knighton might infer from a label. The fog of interpretation has lifted. It is about what the generic manufacturer explicitly encouraged. That precedent injects a degree of certainty into a market that had been shadowed by litigation risk. But clarity has a cost. And a consequence. The Hatch-Waxman Act was designed to speed affordable generics to market. The court's higher standard may do exactly that, dismantling a key barrier to competition. Or it may simply relocate the fight. The next battlefield is granular, technical, and already being mapped by patent attorneys. So has the court delivered the final verdict on skinny labels? Or has it merely outlined the rules for the next, more intricate war to be fought over what, precisely, constitutes an affirmative act of encouragement?